She doesn't regret leaving you, not because she found someone better, not because you were terrible, but because you were too easy to forget. You left nothing unresolved, no silence, no disruption. You let her go with dignity, and she walked away with indifference. She felt no loss, because you gave her certainty, and certainty kills curiosity. That's the truth no one told you when you sent that last message, that paragraph of honesty, that check-in to make peace. You thought clarity would bring closure, but all it did was confirm what she already believed, that you were safe to leave. You see, women don't regret men who collapse. They regret men who become unforgettable through stillness. They regret men who move without noise, rise without updates, disappear without protest. The man she regrets is not the one who asked her why she left. It's the one who never gave her the chance to explain. It's the one who didn't need to win her back to win entirely, and that's the man I want you to become. You've been told to reach out, to check in, to be the bigger person. But when she pulls away, when she ghosts, when she ignores you, that instinct is your destruction. Every word you offer now is ammunition against your dignity. She doesn't read your messages and feel guilt. She feels power because your need confirms her value, and your absence would have questioned it. So what do you do when she ignores you? You do not ask. You do not chase. You do not wait. You shift. You vanish. You create silence where there used to be availability. You build power where there used to be reaction. And most importantly, you give her no explanation, because explanations are gifts for the deserving. She chose distance. Let her feel its full weight. In this video, I will give you 5 cold, precise moves that turn silence into strategy, not to punish her, but to reverse the frame, to shift the emotional gravity so profoundly that her memory of you is rewritten by your absence. These are not tactics to win her back. They're tactics to make her realize what she lost and what she'll never have access to again. If you've ever been ignored, ghosted, dismissed, comment below. She'll regret it, not as a threat, but as a vow. Because by the end of this video, the man you are now will be gone, and the man she remembers will be replaced by someone far more dangerous, the man who doesn't explain his silence. You do not win her attention by saying more. You win it by saying nothing. Most men, when ignored, make the fatal move. They try to close the distance with words. They reach out again. They ask if she saw the message. They offer apologies no one asked for, explanations no one respects. And in doing so, they hand over the last remnants of their power, not to reconnect, but to prove they still bleed for her approval. That is not strength. That is supplication, and it never brings her closer. It only pushes her further. Machiavelli would never chase an enemy who turned their back. He would not ask, "Why did you retreat?" He would simply let their absence become a weakness and weaponize it. When she ignores you, your greatest move is disappearance, not in panic, not in pain, but in precision. You vanish. You go silent. Not because you're broken, but because you are now in control of your signal. And that signal is, I do not explain my worth to those who discard it. This is not passive aggression. This is psychological shock, because what she expects is reaction. She expects you to orbit. She expects to be the center. But when the text doesn't come, when the story views vanish, when your attention evaporates, she doesn't feel flattered. She feels anxious. Not because she's lost you yet, but because you haven't confirmed she can keep you. That silence becomes louder than anything you've ever said. It becomes a mirror, and in that mirror she begins to see her own behavior for what it truly is. Avoidant, dismissive, careless. You didn't fight it, you didn't beg, you vanished and left her alone with the consequence. Understand this. Attention is currency. And when you stop spending it, she feels the economy collapse. Suddenly she's left wondering what happened, wondering why you stopped, wondering if you've moved on. You become the variable in a game where she thought she had the final move. And in that uncertainty, regret begins. But the vanish must be clean. No cryptic posts. No emotional bait. No attempts to spark a reaction. She doesn't need a show. She needs silence. She needs to search for you and find nothing. She needs to ask herself, did I misread him? And when she can't answer that question, you become unforgettable. This is not a tactic for the insecure. It's not a ploy for the petty. It's a strategy for the powerful. You don't vanish to make her chase. You vanish to reclaim gravity. Because when you remove your presence completely, without drama, without resentment, you become the storm that doesn't arrive, the reckoning she cannot predict. She will question everything, and that's the beginning of regret. Disappear, not as a reaction, but as a ruler. You are no longer seeking her attention. You are demanding her memory. The man who explains his silence loses the power of it. You think that if you clarify your distance, she will understand. You think that if you tell her what she did wrong, she will fix it. But a woman does not regret a man who teaches. She regrets a man she cannot reach. She does not chase closure. She chases contrast. And you must become the contrast to every man who begged her to understand. Most men, when ignored, look for reasons. They overanalyze, replay the last interaction, search for patterns, draft long messages in their head explaining how they feel, why they disappeared, what they want. They give away pages of emotional labor to someone who already signaled they don't care to read it. And Machiavelli would say, never offer words where power has already been lost. When your presence has been dismissed, it is not words that restore value, it is scarcity. Scarcity is not blocking her. It's not deleting everything in dramatic fashion. It's not a tantrum dressed in silence. It is calm, calculated withdrawal. You stop being accessible, emotionally, digitally, physically. No more replies, no more stories aimed at her, no more availability. You vanish from her world not with noise, but with absence. You don't say, I'm done. You be done. And in that withdrawal, she begins to feel the cost. People only reflect when the supply is cut off. As long as she knows you'll check in again, she never has to question her actions. As long as your energy is available, she never has to miss it. But when you remove yourself, not out of revenge, but out of value, you force her into the awareness she was trying to avoid. She now has to confront the emptiness you used to fill. She has to guess your mindset. She has to watch you slip out of her influence, and that powerlessness becomes obsession. Do not give her the relief of knowing she can find you whenever she wants. That is the behavior of a servant, not a sovereign. You don't owe her closure. You don't owe her comfort. She chose silence. Let her drown in it. And when she sends the test message, the hey, the emoji, the breadcrumb, do not jump. Let her sit with what she broke. Let her wait for what she once took for granted. Let her realize that attention from you was not a guarantee. It was a privilege. Scarcity does what speeches cannot. It speaks a language the ego understands. Loss. And loss, when unexpected, becomes obsession. She will tell herself stories to explain why you left. She will start to imagine your glow-up. She will wonder if you've met someone new. But you will give her nothing, not even proof, because scarcity, when delivered with poise, does not need to announce itself. It echoes. She ignored you. That was her move. Your response is not a counterattack. It is a disappearance so clean that she has no idea whether it was revenge, peace, or evolution. That ambiguity, that's what makes her regret. She doesn't regret losing you because, in her mind, no one else wanted you. This is the unspoken cruelty of attraction. A man who is not desired by others is rarely desired by her. You thought your loyalty would earn you a place in her mind. You thought your consistency, your honesty, your devotion would keep you close. But what women respond to, what shakes their certainty and triggers doubt, is not how much you cared. It's how much others now do. Social proof is not about flaunting. It's about broadcasting strength without saying a word. It's the visible shift in your presence, your appearance, your lifestyle, your tone, the cues that show she didn't leave a man who broke down. She left a man who's now being noticed. And this, more than anything, forces her to rethink everything. When a woman ignores you, she assumes you'll wait. She assumes you'll stay in the shadows, holding space, checking her stories, thinking about her silently while she explores other options. But what she doesn't expect, what she cannot handle, is seeing you emerge in front of others, looking sharper, moving differently, speaking less, laughing more. She doesn't expect to hear from a friend that you were out, that you were seen, that you seemed untouchable. This is where regret is born, not from isolation, but from watching your value rise without her. Your job is not to chase her, it is to become the man she can no longer access. Start training again, fix your posture, clean your space, wear clothes that speak power, walk like every room is yours to own, even if no one says it aloud. Build your life in such a way that if she stumbles across your profile, it punches her in the stomach. Not because you tried to make her jealous, but because you've clearly stopped waiting. And if she does reach out, don't mention the glow-up. Don't flex. Let her sit with the fact that you didn't change to get her back. You changed because she lost you. That's what leaves an imprint. Not begging, not shouting, not explaining, just undeniable evidence that she let go of something rare, and the world saw it before she did. Machiavelli understood this truth well. Appearances govern perception. Men judge more by the eye than by the hand. She doesn't need to know your heart. She needs to feel your distance, see your evolution, and realize The man she walked away from no longer exists, and the man she's now watching doesn't need her to be complete. He is complete alone, and that, more than anything, makes her question if she ever truly saw you at all. So rise, not for revenge, not for attention, for empire. Let the echo of your evolution find her when she least expects it, not as a whisper, but as a mirror showing her everything she could have stood beside, but chose to overlook. She expects a reaction. Every time she pulls back, ghosts, delays a reply, or tests your patience, she is calculating your response. Will you double text? Will you confront her? Will you beg for clarity? Will you spiral emotionally and then apologize for feeling too much? She doesn't do it maliciously. She does it because she can, because most men flinch. Most men reveal their hunger. Most men validate her position at the top of the emotional hierarchy, and that's why most men are forgotten. But the man who remains calm, the man who shows no shift in tone, no drop in energy, no plea for explanation, that man is disturbing, because his indifference isn't forced. It's not performative. It's surgical. It's rooted in principle, not emotion, and that is what makes it so difficult to handle. Machiavelli wrote, "Men should either be caressed or destroyed." He meant that when you don't fully submit or fully retaliate, you become unpredictable, and unpredictability is power. The woman who ignores you expects either anger or need, but when she gets neither, when she gets only silence delivered with sovereign calm, she is forced to recalibrate her perception of you, because that level of restraint is rare. That level of poise suggests something deeper, that you were never trying to keep her, you were evaluating if she was worth being kept. Indifference is not apathy, it is emotional discipline. It is the refusal to give power to someone who hasn't earned it. When she messages you after ignoring you, and you take hours or days to reply, not out of spite, but because your time is not governed by her mood swings, you are demonstrating the core of masculine value. I control my world. You are not the center of it. Do not try to prove you've moved on. Don't tell her you're unbothered. Show her in your tone, in your pace, in your energy. Let her send 3 messages and get 1 neutral line in return. Let her voice crack with tension while yours stays flat and unreadable. Let her try to re-engage where she once had control and discover that the game has changed. Understand this, women are not drawn to chaos, they are drawn to command. The man who can hold his frame in the face of tests becomes the object of her regret, not because he punished her, but because he refused to lower himself to her emotional volatility. Cold calm is not passive, it is active restraint. It is the discipline to say less, to not explain, to not rush, to let her emotion rise and fall while you remain still, and in that stillness she will begin to feel what she never expected to feel: loss. She will remember how much you used to give, and realize you give nothing now, and she will not know when that shift occurred, only that it did, and now, the man she could once provoke with silence, has made silence his sword. If you respond to being ignored by chasing, explaining, or justifying, then you confirm the frame she already placed you in: disposable, dependent, replaceable. But when you choose to reinvent, not react, you don't just shift the frame, you destroy it entirely. Because the man she walked away from no longer exists. And the man that emerges in his place is not a sequel. He's a different category. Most men try to reclaim attention by pleading to be seen. You must become a man so focused on his evolution that being seen becomes irrelevant. She isn't supposed to recognize you after the transformation. She's supposed to squint and ask herself, did I ever really know him? That's how regret is built, not through confrontation, but through confusion. Through the slow realization that what she discarded has become what she now desires and can no longer access. To reinvent yourself is not about changing clothes or taking gym selfies. It's about killing the version of you that sought validation. It's about eliminating behaviors born from insecurity. It's about replacing pursuit with purpose. You don't look better to make her jealous. You become stronger, sharper, colder for yourself, because the highest revenge isn't revenge. It's rising beyond reach without ever looking back. Frame is psychological reality. And when you shift yours, when you become less reactive, more composed, more in command, you stop existing in the relationship she thought she could predict. You become the author. She is no longer the one withholding approval. You are the one she can't read. You are the one who controls pace. And the more she tries to recreate the old dynamic, the more you break it with indifference, presence, and radical self-reinvention. Remember this, nothing haunts a woman more than the man she thought she could return to, but who now belongs to a life that no longer includes her. You don't block her. You don't insult her. You just evolve past the need to convince her of anything. Your energy says you were part of the story, but not the story's end. And in that quiet detachment, you win more ground than begging could ever reclaim. This is your final move. Break the old frame by becoming too powerful, too silent, too self-directed to fit inside it again. Let her chase an echo. Let her remember a man who doesn't exist. And let her realize the cost of ignoring you was not your reaction, but your replacement. When a woman pulls back, ignores a message, delays a reply, or suddenly acts cold, most men fall into the same fatal pattern. They take it personally. They internalize her distance as rejection. Their mind spirals, and they scramble for emotional recovery. They text again. They apologize for things that were never mentioned. They try to restart the conversation with humor, vulnerability, desperation, or logic. And in doing so, they hand over the only thing they had left: frame control. You must understand this. When she pulls back, she's not always leaving. Often she's testing. She's measuring your emotional gravity. She wants to know, can you hold tension? Can you lead without certainty? Can you remain unmoved when she creates discomfort? And most men fail that test. They rush to close the gap. They start solving problems that weren't even spoken. They beg for clarity, for emotional relief, for validation. But Machiavelli would have said, never fill the silence your enemy creates. Watch how long they can survive in it. A woman's emotional distance is not always about you. Sometimes it's about her control, her fear, her options, her boredom. But if you make her distance about your need to fix it, you tell her everything she needs to know, that your center is hers to disrupt. This is the mistake that kills masculine power in relationships. Not the initial reaction, but the compulsion to repair. You are not a repairman, you are a king. If she distances herself, you do not chase. You wait, you watch, you observe, and you hold your energy like fire in your chest, never offered, never wasted, never surrendered without proof of value. If she pulls away and you respond with stillness, with silence, with self-possession, she begins to question. She expects to be begged. She expects to be noticed. She expects your reaction. When none comes, her ego shatters, not from cruelty, but from contradiction. She cannot make sense of your detachment, and that mystery becomes obsession. Why didn't he chase? Does he care? Did he find someone better? These questions multiply in the absence of your reaction. Men who lose themselves at the first sign of withdrawal were never stable. They were leaning on the connection for identity. But the man who stays grounded while she tests gravity, he becomes the frame. He becomes the emotional center. And women, whether they admit it or not, orbit what they cannot shake. So never make her distance about your deficit. Make it about your discipline. Let her step back and let your silence expand like a throne she's no longer invited to sit beside. If she returns humbled. If she doesn't, she was never strong enough to handle your power to begin with. In every emotional test, the question is not, how do I win her back? The question is, how do I remain unbroken while she's deciding if I'm worth coming back to? That is how you pass the test. That is how you become unforgettable. Regret is not born from guilt. It is born from contrast. She doesn't regret leaving the man who chased her. She regrets leaving the man who made her wonder if she ever truly mattered. She regrets the man who did not beg, did not explain, did not try to rescue what she discarded, but who rebuilt himself so completely that she no longer recognized him. That is the formula. That is the emotional architecture of regret. Not presence, but absence. Not need, but evolution. Not noise, but stillness. A woman begins to regret when the memory she had of you becomes untrustworthy, when she sees your face but feels nothing familiar, when she thought you would be devastated, but you look sharper, walk heavier, move like a man who forgot she ever left. That contradiction is psychological torment, because it proves that her decision, once so casual, may have been catastrophic, not for you, but for her future access. Regret blooms when you no longer flinch at her name, when your eyes don't ask questions, when your voice carries no hesitation. She expected to hurt you. Instead, she watches you lead, and it rewrites the story in her head. Because women are not haunted by the weak. They are haunted by the man who didn't need to win them back to win. Machiavelli knew this. Power is not maintained by constant effort. It is preserved by image, reputation, mystery. A prince who is feared and loved holds his state, but the prince who becomes predictable is overthrown silently. You too must understand this. You were overthrown the moment you became emotionally predictable, the moment she could ignore you without consequence, the moment she knew you would still be waiting. But now she replays your silence. She reads your caption twice. She checks your profile with an anonymous account. She asks mutual friends, casually, if you're seeing someone. She will never admit it, but she is gathering evidence, not to return, but to assess her loss. Because a man who thrives without her becomes a mirror she can't avoid. Women revisit power. They circle the man they once dismissed, not because he demanded they return, but because his absence echoes louder than his presence ever did. That echo speaks of decisions made too quickly, of comfort mistaken for low value, of a man misjudged because he gave too early what should have been earned. Regret is a slow burn, and it only ignites when she sees a version of you that she no longer qualifies for, a version so self-possessed, so precise, so detached from her validation that it leaves her questioning her own worth. Not because you tried to make her feel less, but because you became more. So, no, she doesn't regret it yet. But when the silence stretches, when the glow-up hardens, when the messages go unanswered, and the version of you she once knew disappears into legend, she will. Not because of what you said, but because of everything you stopped saying. She ignored you because she thought she understood you. She thought you were safe to leave. She thought you would linger. Maybe not in her messages, but in her shadow. She assumed your world would shrink in her absence. And for a while, maybe it did. Maybe you stared at your phone. Maybe you hoped. But hope is not strategy. Reaction is not power. And love, when not respected, must be buried without flowers. Now you know what to do. You vanish, not to be missed, but to reclaim presence. You withdraw, not to hurt her, but to stop bleeding for someone who never looked back. You glow, not to make her jealous, but because a man who remembers his value becomes untouchable. You say nothing, not because you're cold, but because your warmth must now be earned, and you reinvent, not to prove your worth, but to become a man she will never qualify for again. She will think of you, she will wonder, she will scroll, she will ask, and when she does, when she reaches back, when she tests the waters, you do not break, you do not explain, you do not soften. You look at her with the same calm she once used to break you, and you offer nothing, because the goal was never to be remembered. The goal is to leave her wondering. Comment. She'll regret it if you've made your final shift. If you're done playing roles that never earned you respect. If you're done handing power to someone who only honored you once you were gone. The new version of you speaks less, moves sharper, and doesn't repeat himself. Let her regret the silence, not because it punished her, but because it proved you never needed her to begin with.